Hey guys, welcome to the Eerie Side Podcast with your hosts, Elena,
Sophia,
and Dee.
We appreciate you guys listening, and I hope you're ready to get on the eerie side. If you guys could just give the podcast a follow and make sure that the bell notification is turned on, just so you guys will be notified whenever we drop an episode. And if you guys are enjoying the show, we would love to hear from you and for you guys to leave a review. And if there's any case suggestions or any feedback you'd like to share, just feel free to send us a message in the text box below and share the podcast with family, friends, coworkers, or really anyone that you think will enjoy it. And follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at the Eerie Side Podcast. Now, before we get into the case, I just want to say listener discretion is strongly advised, especially for those sensitive to topics involving sexual assault, possible cannibalism, and attempted murder and murder of children. So if these topics regarding children are too disturbing for anyone, we understand if you need to take a moment or just not listen. With that being said, if you experience any difficulties during this episode, just know that there are resources available for you if you need them. Okay, so before we get into this case, I would just like to say that this is a case that I found probably one of the most frustrating cases to listen to, knowing that all this stuff could have been prevented so much earlier had things been done properly, I guess, with investigation or connections been made. I guess it was maybe just a sign of the times and how things were done back then. As I let you guys know, Mom and Sophia, that this is that kind of case that you guys want to have a glass of wine ready with you. If there's any 21 and up listeners at home and you're not driving, I highly recommend just popping open a glass of wine, or honestly, maybe even a shot of tequila at this point.
I've already got my wine ready.
Okay, today we're talking about Nathaniel Bar-Jonah, a name that might not be as infamous as Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy, but the crimes he committed and those he is suspected of are just as heinous. This is the case of a man whose depravity knew no bounds and whose past was filled with warning signs that went unheeded for far too long. Nathaniel Bar-Jonah was born David Paul Brown on February 15th, 1957, in Worcester, Massachusetts. From a young age, he exhibited deeply troubling behavior that should have served as a glaring warning sign of the kind of predator he would later become. He was the youngest of 3 children to Philip and Tyra Brown. When his mother was 3 months pregnant, she was involved in a serious car accident when another driver hit the back of her car while she was stopped at a light. She had to wear a neck brace for the remainder of the pregnancy. While he was an infant, David Paul Brown was inactive and had a big hunger that resulted in him crying nonstop until he was fed, which led to excessive weight gain. It got so bad that he basically became immobile, and his parents had difficulties carrying him around. He also did not like being touched, and according to Bar-Jonah, his father would discipline him by beating him with a leather belt out of fear that Bar-Jonah would grow up to be, quote, a homosexual.
Did you say he did not like to be touched?
Yeah.
In what kind of way?
I just think he didn't like any physical touch from anyone.
Was he autistic?
I'm not sure.
Weird correlation that his father was beating him because he didn't want to be touched.
His father was beating him because he was afraid that he was gay, or that he would become gay. I guess he assumed that somehow beating him would prevent that, even though it's not something you can control.
When you said that he was beating him, I somehow thought it was related to him not wanting to be touched.
No, that was just another side bit of information that I included. That's unrelated.
And he was overweight as a baby?
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting because I feel like all babies are chubby, right? I don't think I've ever heard of a baby being overweight unless there's something medically going on.
It was just like he just wouldn't always wanted to be fed all the time is what I gathered. And he would not stop crying until he was fed, and it got so bad that I guess his like muscle mass didn't catch up, so he was in a sense immobile, and his parents couldn't even really carry him because of how heavy he got.
I wonder what was happening to him psychologically as a baby to go through that.
I don't know. It could have been something regarding the accident in the car. Maybe it affected him, and you'll see that he was just born off, for lack of a better word. But at only age 7, things started to take a dark turn for Bar-Jonah when he lured a 5-year-old girl into his basement with the promise of playing in a Ouija board, where he attempted to choke her. Her screams alerted Bar-Jonah's mother, who saved the little girl, but of course Bar-Jonah wasn't punished, and the string of childhood violence would only continue for him.
His parents didn't think he should be punished?
I think the mother thought that he didn't understand what he was doing, and maybe he just thought he was playing with her. As we continue, you'll understand. I think he knew what he was doing.
Wow, 7 is a very young age to be demonstrating potentially psychopathic and such violent behaviors.
Yeah, it definitely is very strange given how young he was. At 15, he would attempt to lure 2 boys with cutout letters and words from magazines to get them into a cemetery in Webster. I'm not sure what happened, if the boys even went or not, but the mother of the boys decided not to press charges and thought psychiatric treatment would be best for Bar-Jonah. I am assuming he didn't get any. There's no record that he did or didn't, but I'm going to take a guess that he did not.
Wait, we don't know what happened here?
I couldn't find any info. I'm assuming he lured them out and attempted to assault them or harm them in some way, and they escaped, but I'm not sure. The next year, in May 1974, so it'd be about 16, he tried to abduct a 9-year-old girl, Mary, in Connecticut, but let her go when she screamed and fought back. Almost a year later, in March 1975, Bar-Jonah posed as a police officer and lured an 8-year-old boy named Richard O'Connor into his car.
How old is he at this moment?
He was 16 when he tried to abduct the 9-year-old girl, and then he was 16, 17 when he abducted the 8-year-old boy, Richard O'Connor.
Pretending to be a policeman?
Mm-hmm.
He did it to a child.
Yeah.
Not to an adult.
Right. He then drove the child to a secluded area, brutally sexually assaulted him, then proceeded to choke him. However, when Richard was taken on his way to school, a neighbor had seen the abduction and alerted authorities, so the police were already looking for Richard. A patrol car spotted a vehicle that matched the description in the abduction, and Bar-Jonah was ordered out of the car, and a bloodied Richard was found. He had defecated and urinated on himself due to the sexual assault and was near death. This should have been the end to his reign of terror, but since Bar-Jonah was still underage, he never faced any jail or prison time and was only sentenced to probation for an unknown number of months. The system failed once again. Then, a few days before his high school graduation, he drove to Connecticut to impersonate a police officer again and abduct a 9-year-old girl.
So he's just a pure pedophile.
Basically, yeah. However, the little girl began vomiting and convulsing because of the assault, so he ended up throwing her out of the car, but a witness nearby saw what happened and got the license plate. He was arrested, but nothing ever happened, and the news never got back to his probation officer, and he was eventually released from probation in May of 1976. When the period was over, he even got a letter thanking him for his cooperation while on probation.
I don't understand how this never got back to his probation officer.
I'm guessing it's just a lack of communication. It's all paperwork at that point in the 70s. There's no technology that would connect them. I'm guessing it's because he drove to Connecticut for what happened to the 9-year-old girl. Or maybe there wasn't a connection between where he was and that.
Even today, crossing county, state lines, all of that makes it worse. And so back then, when there wasn't even the technology that we have today, I can see it being possible.
On September 24th, 1977, Bar-Jonah abducted 2 boys leaving a movie theater by pretending to be an FBI agent. He drove them to a second location where he locked one of the boys in a trunk and took the other one and attempted to suffocate him by putting all of his weight on the boy.
My God.
He weighed 375 pounds at this point. Because I think that boy that he tried to suffocate was being too loud and like fighting back. So that's why he tried to kill him.
How tall is Nathaniel?
He's 5'10".
How old is he at this point?
I think he's 20.
He's 20. He's like 300 pounds. He's a pedophile, and now it's escalating to killing someone.
The boy either passed out or pretended to be dead, and Bar-Jonah left thinking he had killed him. The boy was able to run away and alert authorities about what happened. Bar-Jonah was eventually found and arrested, and the other boy was found alive in the trunk. Finally, Bar-Jonah was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 18 to 22 years in prison. Now, you would think this would be the end of his terror, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. He ended up telling psychiatrists about having sexual fantasies involving murder, torture, and cannibalism, so he was transferred to Bridgewater State Hospital for an indefinite term. On March 22nd, 1984, he legally changed his name to Nathaniel Benjamin Levy Bar-Jonah, claiming he wanted to know what it was like to be discriminated against as a Jewish person. He and his family were not Jewish in any way. In July of 1991, he was released from the hospital, deeming that he was not a danger to anyone, even though he confided in his psychiatrist that he was having all these dark, twisted thoughts about harming people.
It's interesting how they obviously don't take his word seriously.
It's just shocking that a judge can still release him. On August 9th, 1991, only a month after being released, he saw a boy in a car outside a post office in Oxford, Massachusetts, where Bar-Jonah entered and sat on the boy.
Sat on the boy?
Sat on the boy.
Why does his mind go there? How is this boy? Is he lying down?
He was in the car. At this point, he weighs 275 pounds. I think he had some weird sexual sadistic fantasy about suffocation, and he just used his weight for that.
So he's lost weight.
According to the research, yeah, that he was now like 275 pounds.
I never thought that weight could be used as a weapon, but this story is taking us to new places we've never been before.
Oh, yeah, just you wait. However, witnesses saw this and Bar-Jonah fled. The description that was given of Bar-Jonah was recognized by an officer that arrested him 15 years earlier. He was eventually found and arrested, but claimed he didn't know the boy was there and just entered the car to get out of the rain.
Oh, yeah, he just casually sat on the boy when he's getting in the car.
Yeah, I find that very hard to believe. And there's a report that he did later on go on to confess that he was trying to kill the boy, but he claimed originally that he didn't know he was there. It was a stupid excuse that I'm assuming no one believed. He was given only 2 years probation for this if he agreed to move to Great Falls, Montana, and never return to Massachusetts.
So let me understand. The way Massachusetts is solving the problem is by telling him to go to another state so he is someone else's problem?
From what I saw in one article, yeah.
Okay.
Mama loves the logic of that one.
And also the reason that he was released from the hospital was in agreement that he would live with his mother in Massachusetts. So now he can't even do that since he's moving to Montana. But in December of 1993, he was accused of molesting an 8-year-old boy that he was babysitting, but claimed that if he had actually done that, he would have killed the boy. And the case was dropped because his lawyer claimed that a right to a speedy trial was violated. Yeah, so his logic was, well, if I did that, I would have killed him, and I didn't.
So far, he hasn't killed any, though, it seems like.
That we know of. It's just hard to tell who he has killed and who he hasn't. I'm assuming he probably has at this point, but we just don't know. But there's really no evidence as of right now.
Unless he's flimsy and hasn't figured out how to do things.
Yeah, it seems like he's tried to kill children, but hasn't done it. I hate to use the word successfully, but he hasn't successfully done it yet. And we'll get into when that kind of all changes right now. So on February 10th, 1996, 10-year-old Zachary Ramsey vanished while walking to school. Despite an extensive search, no trace of him was found. Witnesses reported seeing an off-white four-door vehicle almost running Ramsey over. It was also later reported that the little boy was crying and looked like he was being followed by an obese man by another witness. Detective Bill Belusi received a list of local registered sex offenders from the FBI, but immediately focused his suspicion on Bar-Jonah, who was not included on the list, but Belusi had investigated the December 1993 case. So Belusi sought a search warrant for the residence where Bar-Jonah lived with his mother after police were denied access to the property. However, his request was denied, and despite his efforts to obtain a new warrant, Belusi was unsuccessful. Not long after, Bar-Jonah moved out of his mother's house. On December 13th, 1999, Bar-Jonah was spotted outside an elementary school for the third time in a week. He was wearing a dark blue jacket, a knit cap, and carrying 2 cans of pepper spray, a badge, and I've heard reports of a toy gun or a real gun.
Oh my gosh, he is so much bigger than a child. He does not need pepper spray to subdue them.
Especially 2 cans of pepper spray is
I know.
crazy.
And to think of him using that on a child is just disheartening. At this point, if they want to find him, all they have to do is go to the nearest elementary school and he will be there.
Yeah. And it's also reported that his apartment was like near a bunch of elementary school and places where kids would frequent.
That's wrong.
Yeah. Belusi, along with the Montana Attorney General, charged Bar-Jonah with impersonating an officer and carrying a concealed weapon. A judge approved a search warrant on December 15th, allowing law enforcement to search both Bar-Jonah's new apartment and his mother's home for objects related to impersonation. During the search, police discovered 2 coats, one containing a toy badge in the pocket, and a second one containing a toy badge and a stun gun and a baseball cap labeled security enforcement. Additionally, evidence included a pulley system on Bar-Jonah's kitchen ceiling, 2 albums filled with images of children with sections cut out, and document dealing knots and bondage, and an article on autoerotic asphyxiation.
What does he need a pulley system in his house?
I'll briefly get into that a little bit later, but he would hang children from it. Yeah. It's crazy that this is not a more well-known case, given how horrific this case is.
I think this is the most horrific case almost.
I was going to say the case of Luis Garavito, the Beast.
Oh my God.
That one's up there, yeah.
Oh my God. That one was awful. Oh my gosh. It's so awful that it's hard to even conceive that it's possible because he did that horrific act so many times to so many kids. What's so bad about this is like, he is the worst criminal possible because not only does he target and hurt children by sexually assaulting them, but he just adds this torture, bondage part of it that makes it so much more haunting.
Yeah, exactly. Years after Zachary Ramsey's disappearance, police investigations determined that Bar-Jonah had access to his mother's off-white 4-door 1978 Toyota Corolla on the day Ramsey vanished. At that time, his mother and brother were out of town attending a funeral. Furthermore, it was discovered that Bar-Jonah had not been working on the day of the disappearance, nor the days leading up to it. 2 days following the initial searches, Belusi secured a second warrant for any documents or photographic evidence. While searching Bar-Jonah's apartment, detectives uncovered a list titled Lake Webster containing 54 boys' names. Many of the names were linked to Bar-Jonah's youth in Massachusetts, including 3 boys he had been convicted of abducting in the 1970s. The name Zachary Ramsey appeared on the list, followed by the word died. Additionally, police found dozens of newspaper clippings about Ramsey's case, hundreds of thousands of photographs of children, and undeveloped film containing sexually explicit images of Bar-Jonah with 3 unidentified boys. A former roommate of Bar-Jonah reported finding clothing in his apartment that closely resembled what Ramsey was wearing on the day he disappeared, along with a pair of bloody gloves.
So you mentioned that there is a boy that he wrote as died. How do we know if that boy was dead because of his doing?
Well, that was the kid that had disappeared a few years earlier, and there was a report of a white car.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about, where another witness saw an obese man following after him.
And how old is he at this point that you're describing him?
He's at least in his 40s by now.
Oh, we're at that point.
Yeah, we're in the 1990s. 1996 is when Zachary Ramsey disappeared, and he got out of the hospital in 91, and he was born in 57. Another roommate recounted that Bar-Jonah had mentioned Ramsey in conversations once just days before his disappearance, and another time in a chilling remark stating that Ramsey would never be found because he had been chopped up and scattered in different locations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just, it gets even worse, believe it or not. Investigators also discovered notebooks filled with what initially appeared to be arbitrary symbols, but were later determined to be a coded system. With assistance of the FBI, the writings were eventually deciphered, revealing detailed descriptions of child torture and cannibalism, as well as recipes referencing human body parts. On July 5th, 2000, Montana police formally charged Bar-Jonah with kidnapping and sexual assault, in addition to the kidnapping and sexual assault of 3 other boys and the murder of Zachary Ramsey. He was held in the Cascade County Jail in Great Falls and pleaded not guilty to all charges. Prosecutors announced their intention to seek the death penalty. Bar-Jonah was charged with the abduction and sexual assault of 3 boys and was convicted of kidnapping, aggravated assault, and sexual assault, including allegations that he had tortured a boy and hung him from the ceiling. Ramsey's mother was influenced by Bar-Jonah's defense team to testify that she believed her son was still alive, which led to the jury not convicting him for the murder. And this is the murder of Zachary Ramsey.
Let me see if I understand this. The jury did not find him guilty of murder because Zachary's mom didn't believe her son was dead.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons. There was also just circumstantial evidence. There was no hardcore forensic evidence that linked him to the murder, so I think it was a combination of both of those things.
There were 3 other boys that he did not kill, correct?
Right.
And when these boys left this guy's place, they did not go to the police and say they were abused?
I'm not 100% certain as how it all went down. I think a lot of this is kept quiet because they were underage. So I'm assuming it's possible that maybe they came forward and that's what led to the police investigating.
Not everyone reports a sexual assault or even reports it right away.
Mm-hmm. I understand, but it's 3 boys. You would hope that since there were 3 boys, that one of the 3 would say something.
I think that would probably be the most likely, but it's possible that all 3 of them chose not to.
It could also be that because they discovered him outside of the school and that's what led to all the searches in the house, it's possible that they were able to identify the 3 boys from pictures or something like that, and then they reached out to them. It's not certain, but it seems that they had enough evidence that they found in that house to at least convict him of assault.
Okay, so it looks like if they hadn't found him outside the school, they may not have known that he was a predator.
I think at some point someone would have come forward, but yeah, it seems like that's what was like the nail in the coffin for him.
How long was he living in this area now?
I'm not too sure. I think he moved out of the mother's house sometime after 93, so like 94, 95, somewhere around there, because by 99 he was in Montana.
Where is his father in all of this?
I don't know. I am assuming he's dead.
I was wondering if the father was seeing something, didn't understand it. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying the father did the right thing.
Yeah.
Didn't understand it and thought he was a homosexual. Instead, he was a pedophile and he ended up being a killer. So I'm wondering if there was some mental issue there the father was seeing, didn't understand it, and thought, one, that he was homosexual, second, by beating him, he'd get it out of him.
It's possible. I truthfully don't know. He was doing some weird things as a kid, and maybe he just misinterpreted that as him possibly being gay. I'm not sure.
And if he's starting at a very young age, I'm not sure if it was nature or nurture.
It doesn't seem like he had that rough as a childhood.
Oh, just what he just mentioned about his dad,
Right.
which you didn't think it was that big of a deal. It wasn't like excessive or anything.
It's definitely like a deal in the sense that it left a mark on him, right? It would for any child. It's definitely a big deal. But because I've seen kids who have had far worse abuse and have come out just fine, not hurting anyone. It didn't seem like it was an excessive amount. It seemed like he was hitting him in the same way as people would do for that time. Now, is it still wrong? Yes. His reasoning for it was definitely very wrong, but it didn't seem like he was abusing him a lot.
The other thing I'm wondering is he had gone to therapy.
No.
Didn't the therapist let him go from the mental institution?
Oh, well, yeah. When he was in the mental institution.
Right.
Yeah.
He was in there, had therapy, and yet they thought they could let him go, which I'm wondering if he had some form of narcissism or something where he knew how to play them.
It's possible, but it also seemed like he was pretty upfront with what was going on in his head. Like, it didn't seem like he was hiding.
That's true. A narcissist, unless they're manipulative, they probably wouldn't say, oh yeah, I'm into all of these dark stuff, like pedophilia and the cannibalism and all of that.
Yeah.
But he did tell the therapist this is what is in it, and they didn't believe him. So why is that?
I have no idea. I don't know. I have no idea why that wasn't addressed, or if it was addressed, why it didn't hold as much weight as it should have when he was up for release.
Do you think some people just did not believe that a human could be that dark? Maybe the people he was dealing with were like, okay, there's no way he's into all of that.
I'm not sure. I do have a quote a little bit further down from one of his therapists. It seemed to me like they believed him. It's definitely very interesting. To move on, during the trial, 36-year-old Mary, you remember Mary was one of the girls that he had assaulted and attempted to abduct her and ended up releasing her because he was fighting back too much.
When she was younger.
Right.
She was the one who vomited?
No, that was a different one.
So she's 36 at this point.
Yeah, so during the trial, 36-year-old Mary identified Bar-Jonah as the man who had assaulted and attempted to abduct her in 1974. However, due to the statute of limitations, Bar-Jonah could not be prosecuted for this crime. He was sentenced to 130 years in prison and maintained his innocence until his death. Despite Ramsey's mother's objections, a judge declared Zachary Ramsey legally dead in 2011. Montana authorities were unaware of Bar-Jonah's previous criminal history in Massachusetts, and an issue raised by activists who campaigned for mandatory registration of former sex offenders. In December 2004, the Montana Supreme Court denied Bar-Jonah's appeal and upheld his 130-year sentence. On April 13, 2008, Bar-Jonah was found unresponsive in his prison cell. He had been in poor health, and the postmortem revealed high levels of LDL in his arteries, with heart attack being the cause of death.
Did you ever say that he ever ate anyone? Was he ever actually eating people?
I'm going to get to that right now, actually. All right, so it's also important to note that there are many more victims that could possibly be related to Bar-Jonah, but there was not enough evidence to confirm that. The cannibalism can be traced to his childhood, when he would pick and suck on the blood from wounds, meaning he would pick off scabs and suck on the...
Oof.
Yeah. This was also reported by the staff in the Montana State Prison. And when he was a kid, like, his teachers would talk to his mother, and I'm assuming his father, saying he is picking off these scabs and sucking the blood, and it is disturbing the children and the teachers. He was doing that even when he was a kid. While in Bridgewater State Hospital, he confided in psychiatrists about his murderous and cannibalistic ideations. One therapist stated that his, quote, sexual fantasies, bizarre in nature, outline methods of torture, and extend to the dissection and cannibalism, end quote, and that he, quote, expressed a curiosity about the taste of human flesh, end quote. Yeah, very, very disturbing. It was also reported that following Ramsey's disappearance, Bar-Jonah did not make any grocery store purchases for about a month. However, he could have also paid for groceries using cash. He also held cookouts where he served a variety of different foods such as burgers, chili, meat pies, etc. Many people at these cookouts reported that the meat had a weird taste, but Bar-Jonah said he had gone hunting and used venison. However, he did not own a rifle or a hunting license, and there was no report that he had ever been deer hunting at any point.
Okay, I'm sorry, but if I'm eating meat and it has a weird taste, I'm stopping.
Yeah.
My mom and I once ate at this place that served different kinds of meat. Like, supposedly it had like alligator and a whole bunch of, I want to say snake too. We didn't get that. We just had the normal like cow burger, but it tasted so weird that I was like, I don't know what this meat is, but I'm stopping eating it.
They definitely reported that the meat had a very weird, distinct taste to it that made them pretty uncomfortable. He also worked at a kitchen at Malmstrom Air Force Base and at a Hardee's fast food restaurant in Great Falls. It's speculated that he could have gotten rid of the remaining meat by giving it to unsuspecting military personnel and customers. However, there was not enough evidence to prove this. It's also important to note that when detectives were looking through his apartment, they found recipes titled, quote, little boy pot pie, French fried kid, and stuff like lunch served on the patio with roasted child.
Oh my God.
Really, really disturbing recipes that all included human.
This man is sick. He's just sick.
But there's no proof he did it. It could have been him living out his fantasies.
Exactly.
I hope it was.
But it is sick.
It is. It's definitely very disturbing and disgusting. And in Bar-Jonah's journals found that he mentioned serving these recipes to his neighbors. The case of Nathaniel Bar-Jonah remains one of the most disturbing true crime stories in Montana and Massachusetts history. His monstrous acts, hidden in plain sight for so long, leave us with more questions than answers. Who else might have fallen victim to him, and what do we truly know about the depths of his depravity? One thing is certain. Bar-Jonah's legacy is one of horror and heartbreak, and this story serves as a chilling reminder that monsters can lurk where we least expect them.
This is one of the worst cases we've ever covered, and it was, like you said, very, very heavy.
It's heavy and it's frustrating because there were so many signs and so many attempts to lock him away and throw away the key. And even when they did lock him away, he still got out. And I don't even think he completed his whole sentence.
What year was it when he died?
2008. So he would have been about 51, somewhere around there. 50, 51, 52.
It's interesting. I wonder if it's because of the times that he got away with it. If they just didn't believe everything he said or what was behind that. They did put him in a mental institution, so they had him in the right place, but they felt it was okay to release him and not to find what he was telling them serious.
I just don't understand how he could confide in all that to his therapist and psychiatrist and yet still get out.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I don't know if there's just overcrowding in the hospital, but even so, there's got to be more stable patients that they could release before him.
What's the point of even having him there if they're not even going to keep him there? The whole point is to make sure that unsafe people are not released.
Also, it seems like he knew what he was doing was wrong, so I don't understand why they put him in the hospital in the first place.
They should just put him in jail?
Yeah, to me, there's nothing that the hospital can do. Usually nowadays, if you're a pedophile or rapist or murderer, you go to prison. It's normally when you plead not guilty by reason of insanity that you go to a mental hospital or some sort of like hospital. So I'm shocked that they put him there in the first place because to me, it seems like he knew what he was doing. He was hiding his tracks, trying to avoid getting caught, all that stuff.
Let's look at this, though. There is something mentally wrong with him.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean he doesn't understand right or wrong.
Right.
And I'm not saying he should be put into a mental institution and left there. I mean, maybe jail is the right place for someone like that. But it's interesting. He's not there with a normal mind and decides to do crime. He's there because there is something wrong there with
Yeah.
the way he foresees things.
Oh, for sure.
And he's wrong, but he's very sick.
Honestly, what is it that makes certain individuals pedophiles? I don't even understand why that's something that has to happen in this world. What makes people interested in that?
I think from what I gathered from this research, it's multifactorial, so it includes genetics, stressful events, learning processes, and so it seems to be like there's not a clear answer, but it seems like it's a combination between nature and nurture.
It doesn't seem like they really understand it completely.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for listening to us this week. I know it was a tough episode, but we appreciate you guys sticking to the end. We love our listeners, and it's because of each and every one of you that we do this podcast. Your help and engagement really helps this podcast grow. And if you enjoy this episode, please text a friend, family member, or anyone to listen to our podcast. And until next time, make sure you stay on the eerie side. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye and be safe.